Hello, Steve.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you. It's good to be with you and your beautiful face and your beautiful tree behind your house there.
Thank you. I so appreciate you joining me for this conversation. We're just taking an opportunity briefly to introduce our wider network to the folks who've agreed very graciously to be part of the Wisdom Council for Kinship Plot. And the Wisdom Council is a group of people who have agreed to join us in this journey as encouragers, as mentors, as people who can bring some insights and challenge and wisdom from their own lived experience. And so Steve Smith is part of our Wisdom Council. So I'm going to ask some brief questions to you, Steve, if you would just share however much or little that you want, so our network can get to know you a little bit. So the first question is, tell us who you are. What do you care about, and a little bit about what you do?
First, most important thing I think I need to tell you is that Gwen and I are both 67, and we are at a different place in our career journey than you and Wes are. So we are really trying to move off a platform that we pioneered through a ministry called Potter's Inn. And Potter's Inn is a ministry of caring for the soul of market leaders and ministry leaders. So we really help people when they've hit dead ends, when they've hit cul-de-sac issues of their life, when they hit a wall, and that could be in their marriage, in their questioning of their vocation, like I'm sick of ministry, I can't do it anymore, I'm broken, a total meltdown in marriage in some degree, some crisis of faith. So really, I think I'm a spiritual midwife, and Gwen is a spiritual midwife, and we both are spiritual directors. And so I've been able to write some books on these themes, and we currently do a podcast, and we had our own retreat center, which Wes was very keen to know about, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But we now are kind of moving into more of a global presence using technology to get the message of soul care out to now over 80 countries around the world.
So the next question I have is, as you know, as we're bringing Kinship Plot to life, we're doing a lot of thinking, reading, wondering, learning about this concept and practice of kinship, which we define as this mutuality of being and solidarity and belonging to each other. So would you tell us a little bit, how is the concept and practice of kinship important to you and your work?
Well, it's everything. I mean, being created in the image of God means that we were created to do kinship. We were created in the image of a trinity, not just a brass god or a gold god made out of gold, but in a trinity, which means a multiplicity of personality and being and essence.
Mm.
And when we are our best, Stephanie, we are in community. When we are functioning whole and holistic, we are in kinship, we are in relationship. We don't do our lives as human beings in a vacuum, like a silo. Many people, that's how they do their life, and we're cut off from each other. So silos don't work in the soul. We're not a silo. It's we're it's not good for a person to be alone. It says it clearly in the opening pages of Genesis. So over 54 times in the New Testament, there are these one another passages: love one another, encourage one another, build one another up, pray for one another, love one another, like 15 times. That's reflecting the Imago Dei.
So let me ask you this, because one of the things as we bring this to life is that we're starting to realize we're not good at this, right? There's barriers, and like you said, there are threats to practicing that kind of kinship, that kind of image of God and relationality all the time. So in your work, in what you've seen, your experience, your own life, what do you think are the most common barriers to kinship and being able to practice it?
Well, the greatest barrier to kinship is within our own heart. And David prayed this, Stephanie, in one of his Psalms. He says, "Give me, O Lord, an undivided heart that I might praise your name." And so my understanding of kinship is the bringing together of our many pieces from our childhood wounds, our teenage nicks and bruises, our family of origin stories, and to live out our belovedness with each other, the belovedness that Jesus claimed on his baptism day when God said out of that voice, "You are my beloved son." What we've done in the world today and what we're doing in America currently is giving our brokenness, broken pieces of our political persuasions, our broken opinions for each other, our broken knowledge, and all of this without the inner wholeness. What if we could first become whole and holy and offer that to each other and build community in that
And
way?
you hinted at something, but I'm going to ask you this final question, which is, what is one practice that would move us closer to actualizing this kind of radical mutuality?
Because every time we sit at a table, we're reminded we're not alone. And there's so much aloneness in the world. And that is the seething of our anger and our brokenness and our suspicions of each other because we can't find each other. What if we found each other around the table? Who doesn't like to eat? And Jesus must have known this. And that's why he chose that that much more than a metaphor when he said, "This is my body and this is my blood." He wasn't just offering us a metaphor. He was saying, like he did with the in the on the road to Emmaus, they said, "Come and stay with us," and then they had a meal together, and then they recognized him. When we are when we're moving in that direction and we're having slow food and slow conversation and able to really talk, then we connect. And I love this vision for Kinship Plot that through the arts, through connection, through poetry, through literature, through storytelling, through sharing, we can find each other. And by the way, I thought that's kind of what the church was supposed to be, but come to find out, the American church is, we don't need to get into that, but I think sometimes we've swallowed something that we need to rethink here, because my understanding of the New Testament is when Jesus talked about this, it was finding each other around the table and wait for each other. Don't,
Hmm.
he even said, don't, you know, wait until we're all together, because there's something when we're all together, then we can recognize Jesus in our
That is,
midst.
yeah, the table and Jesus's own practice of eating with people and gathering
It's
um,
radical hospitality, isn't it?
and
And
knowing that we're welcoming ourselves and God is welcoming all of us. There's no hierarchy at that table. There's no, if
yeah,
anyone's the host, it's the triune God is the host, showing us the way to relationality. Because I think when you talked about that picture of passing, there's such a giving and a receiving that happens all the time as you sit around the table. There's a disarming, and then there's also a reminder that we are in relationship with our own bodies that need to be fed, with
oh,
plants and even animals as they are being passed around the table, with all, so many things that we're reminded of, the many relationships that we are, even non-human ones. And that's another piece of kinship plot that we dream about too. So
I think that's all important, Stephanie. And I think as we learn about the table, as we learn about each other, and maybe we don't start with our differences, from our silo parts of our stories, but we find our mutuality, our common interest, be a part of it.
thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share and introduce yourself and share from your heart today, Steve. I really appreciate that.
It's a
I hope we can
pleasure.
be around a table again soon.
We want to more tacos or something.
Exactly. All right. Well, bless you. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephanie.